No, Richard Dawkins is not becoming a Christian. No, he's not even moving closer towards Christ. He's actually being very consistent with everything he's said in the past. And there are a few reasons why we need to clarify this as it relates to how woke people use our reactions to things, our assumptions, the way we respond to something to manipulate us. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Enemies Within the Church podcast. You can go to enemieswithinthechurch.com right now to view the documentary. Maybe if you've already viewed it, buy a copy for a friend, buy a couple copies for a friend, and just buy a whole case. That'd be great too. You can also go to Enemies Within the Church News at EWTCnews.com. Again, EWTCnews.com to see our continued projects that go on at a much quicker rate than documentaries. And if you didn't see the announcement, we are working on at least one follow-up project. And I clarify and make it clear, at least one, because there might be even more fun in the future. But what are we talking about today? Again, there's a clip of Richard Dawkins that's been going around. It's been getting a lot of reactions, and I've seen something specific in these reactions that I want to talk about, and I think it's a good launching off point for an episode that's going to be a pseudo How the Woke Manipulate episode. Not quite, it'll be a little bit different. And in fact, we're going to be continuing the How the Woke Manipulate series on season 3 of the podcast, but that's going to be coming a little bit down the road. We're doing some fun updates that it's going to be an exciting series to continue, and in hopefully an even better format. But let's watch this clip of Dawkins. Let's look at this clip from Dawkins. And now, one thing I want to say about this clip is it is not the greatest audio quality. I apologize. There's nothing I can do about that. This is the source video. This is not it's not like somebody captured at a lower quality. This is the source video. So bear with that, and let's go ahead and watch this. It's only 2.5 minutes long.
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically, the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it wouldn't matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more, are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
Yes, I do, really. I mean, I might choose my words carefully. I mean, if I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. I mean, it seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion, in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins. Why is Islam fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, I mean, the way women are treated. I mean, Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things. But there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who, of course, are quite different. but the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, it's fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays, and I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith.
So you can see from that there's some interesting things going on, and you might ask, and I hope some people are asking this question. Well, how do you justify your statements, Kyle? How do you justify saying that Dawkins is not moving towards Christ? Dawkins is not noticing the positives of Christianity, and in that sense, coming a little bit closer to understanding the truth. Well, we're going to look at that, and again, it's going to get into understanding a little bit of how we process things and how that can be abused. But to clarify things, let's look at some of the reactions. Now, because this is not about, hey, this specific person had a bad reaction and we need to analyze that reaction. This is just an overview of people's reactions. These are not necessarily small names, but we're not going to share who they are because that's not the point and that's not the purpose. So we have Richard Dawkins, when he realizes Christianity forms the only basis for freedom and human rights. What have I done? So obviously implying that, and this is all specifically in response to this clip. This is all in the context of that clip. So saying from that clip, he's realized the damage he's done and that Christianity is what produces a good society. On Richard Dawkins and the others who are realizing what happens when you destroy the foundations of Western civilization. Christianity is good for society because it's true. Now, to clarify what the person's saying here, she's saying that Dawkins, among others, are realizing that the foundation of Western civilization is Christianity, and this person is arguing that the reason that it is good for society is because it is true. And he's implying that that is the thing that Dawkins is missing. Now, based on both of these reactions, I want you to ponder a question. Did Dawkins say or imply what these two people have said? Did he say or imply? And implies doing a lot of work here, very broad, not just like direct implication, but just kind of, does his statement itself imply these things? Keep that question in mind. Does his statements actually agree with how these people are interpreting it, how these people are representing it? Let's continue on. I believe we're seeing a shift towards theism and Christianity after many years of decline. Maybe it's a reaction to our godless culture, encouraging trends from least to most extreme. Atheists Richard Dawkins and Douglas Murray are softening and admitting the strengths of Christianity, referring to themselves as cultural Christians. And so one of the things I want to clarify is we're seeing people discussing in terms of shifting. Dawkins is shifting. He's going from one position to a new position. He's on a journey of transition. And that's where people are saying things like, oh, he may not be becoming a Christian, but he's getting closer. Richard Dawkins, 2008. There's probably no God. Now stop worrying and get on with your life. Richard Dawkins, 2024. There's probably no God, but if there is a God, I sure hope it's the Christian one. So now we're getting into some more substantive claims. This claim is that in 2008, he was in a quite different position where he was saying, there's no God, move on with your life. And now he's saying, there's no God, but, if there is one, I really hope it's that Christian one. Did he imply that? Did he imply or say that in his statement? And in fact, start thinking, was 2008 Richard Dawkins in a different place than 2024 Richard Dawkins? Let's read one more. Richard Dawkins is right about cultural Christianity, and every prominent American evangelical leader is wrong. Imagine telling the 2007 version of yourself this statement would be true in 17 years. Now here's where the last two, and this last one in particular, are where we get some substance. They are making bold claims about the transitioning of Richard Dawkins. Now, both of them are trying to advance their own idea. They've seen something in Dawkins and they've injected something in there. I'm starting to get a little bit into what's going on and how people react. But again, these last two give us something to latch onto. So we see this idea that, the 2007 version of Dawkins, he gets it. He gets it where, quote, every prominent American evangelical leader is wrong. He gets something that American evangelical leaders can't see. Again, those are some pretty big statements. Let's challenge things. With the 2007 version of myself, now we're putting it into the context of 2007 version of self is aware of what's going on with Dawkins, which I was, at least to some degree. I just don't know how deep I would have known these things, but we're talking hypotheticals now. Would my 2007 version of myself be surprised at the 2024 Dawkins? No. I find it very fascinating that 2008 and 2007 were used. Now, there's a reason. It's because that was the height of Dawkins mania. Dawkins was on just the, every edgy atheist was just having just this love fest with Dawkins. That is until he made himself look like an absolute, complete, and utter fool to the point where he was pulled from speaking engagements after his interview on the movie Expelled. My goodness, was that... Yeah, there was no way around how bad that was for him. But that's why they're going back to those dates, 2007, 2008, because that was the height of Dawkins mania. They're saying, oh, wow, he was this, this was the height of his rabid atheism, and now he's changed. And now he gets these deep truths that not even Christians understand. I want to go on a rabbit trail about that, but let's not. So let's read a couple excerpts from this BBC News article from 2007 titled, Dawkins, I'm a Cultural Christian. Scientist Richard Dawkins, an atheist known worldwide for arguing against the existence of God, has described himself as a cultural Christian. He told the BBC's Have Your Say that he did not want to purge the UK of its Christian heritage. The comments come after... let's continue down a little bit. Professor Dawkins, author of The God Delusion, added that he liked singing carols along with everyone else. Professor Dawkins, who has frequently spoken out against creationism and religious fundamentalists, replied, I'm not one of those who wants to stop Christian traditions. This is historically a Christian country. I'm a cultural Christian in the same way many of my friends call themselves cultural Jews or cultural Muslims. There's a key thing right there to understanding how he's defining his terms. So yes, I like singing carols along with everybody else. I'm not one of those who wants to purge a society of our Christian history. If there's any threat, these sort of things, I think you will find it comes from rival religions and not from atheists. So 2007 Dawkins is perfectly, utterly consistent with 2024 Dawkins. There hasn't been the slightest change in Dawkins. He's exactly where he was. Now, we need to unpack a little bit about what Dawkins means by some of the things he said, why he said it, why at the height of his rabid atheist attacks on Christianity, he was also saying these things about being cultural Christian, that he likes that the country has this Christian heritage, blah, blah, blah. It's important to understand his view of religion, his view of humanity, his view of Christianity in relation to British society, and just how he's defining his terms. We need to understand this before we can talk about people's reactions, because we need that context of the truth, at least the truth in the sense of how he defines things, how he sees things, before we can understand why the reactions are a little bit problematic, and then talk about how woke people use these kind of reactions to manipulate you. Because they do. It's a very easy thing to do, very, very popular thing to do. It's a actual tactic, and not just in the sense of like, oh, something kind of, no, like people are trained to do this kind of thing. We will talk about that. But what is Dawkins actually lamenting? Now, one thing, again, knowing a little bit more about Dawkins, knowing that he's already described himself this way, knowing that there hasn't been a change, I was able to notice things immediately in that little clip. There was a shift partway through. And it really comes in when the host chimes in to ask a question, and then he starts going off answering that question. He's actually changing what he's talking about in particular. He's changing slightly what he's talking about. Because in the beginning, he's lamenting that there is celebrations of Ramadan being promoted in London in place of Easter. And he's lamenting the loss of tradition and heritage. He is lamenting, and again, that little article, or the excerpts from the article from the BBC News that we read, helps clarify that, because look at the terms he was using all throughout it: history, heritage, tradition, culture. To him, Christianity was a useful myth, in the same way that the Greek pantheon of gods and their mythologies, they were useful myths to the development of the Greek culture. Just as same with Egypt and their mythologies and their religious beliefs. And every society, that's his view of religion, that they were useful myths. And for him, Christianity is the useful myth that built British society. But unlike some of the reactions that people are giving, where they think that he's realizing that Christianity is the foundation and then everything was built on top of that, it's a builder of society in the sense that you had the base already. The base is something else. It is a builder, a workman that is helping to construct, that's providing material, helping to put it into place so we can construct and get past. In the end, he wants us to get past the myth and into his version of truth. His version of truth is atheism. His version of truth is evolution. And those are keys to this. He does not want believing Christianity. Again, there was the shift. There was a shift between talking about cultural Christianity then to talking about believing Christianity. And he compares believing Christianity. I would rather have a believing Christian than a believing Muslim, because the beliefs of Islam are more dangerous than the beliefs of Christianity. Then in the other context, he's talking about, I lament the loss of our heritage, our tradition, what made part of the things that built the elite British society. If you do not know, Dawkins is a very smug, arrogant man. If you know hardly anything about Dawkins, you probably know that. He's also very smug and arrogant about British culture, British society. He does see, in some sense or another, British people as being, I don't know if he'd word it this way, because these sort of descriptions have fallen out of favor, but he very much follows in the footsteps of the early evolutionists, and he believes that he's part of a more evolved society, a more evolved people. He's got that classical evolutionist mindset to him. These were the type of people that were using their beliefs to then get into eugenics and then to measure people's skull size to determine if they were more advanced or not, and were showing off their balding heads to show how large their cranium was, to say that they're a larger brained, more advanced, more evolved human than others. These people were crazy. But Dawkins is very much in that sort of vein of evolution, the militant, atheist, classical evolution. That is Dawkins. He does believe that he has a superior worldview and that he comes from a society with a superior or becoming superior, always evolving, growing worldview. He's happy, even in the clip, he's happy that belief in God is going down, but he doesn't want to lose the cultural impact. And in regards to things like architecture, he wants his beautiful cathedrals. Tradition and culture, he wants the carols, Christmas carols. He likes these traditions. He doesn't like the beliefs. Now, here's where we need to start splitting things. For Dawkins, when he's saying cultural Christianity, he is really talking about culture. Culture. Now, there's some elements of including Christianity in the evolution of British morality. But even then, it's an unshackling ourselves from the restraints of Christianity. We're evolving past the words of the book. So he's not complimenting Christian morality only in the sense that he's complimenting the ability of the British people to evolve through this thing called Christianity to get to a higher plane of existence, a better state, a more enlightened view of morality. And that's one of the things he was lamenting about Muslims, that they haven't done that they still are more fundamentally attached to their holy book, and that their holy book is much more dangerous. He really is talking about culture specifically, not the impact of Christianity as a belief system on a culture, but the cultural elements of British society, like cathedrals and Christmas carols, and even some of the impacts that they've evolved through. That's what he's talking about with cultural Christianity, and that's why he's willing to identify as that. Whereas then we also have nominal Christianity. People can use cultural Christianity as a reference to nominal Christianity. Someone that would say, I'm a Christian, but doesn't actually believe it. And you may go, wait, isn't that exactly what Dawkins said? No, he is not saying, I'm a Christian. He's saying, I am a cultural Christian. I am someone who is in a society whose cultural myth is Christianity. Not someone who claims to be a Christian in some believing sense or another, claims to be a Christian but isn't. You know, this is, go across the United States, you'll find cultural Christians all over the place. People, nominal Christianity, Christian in name only. Someone that might even go to church, maybe won't go to church, but will just adamantly defend that they are a Christian, but then don't actually believe any of it. Dawkins is a much more honest form. He's like, hey, I like these things, these cultural things, I'm going to take them. Nominal Christianity is very dangerous because it is someone who is self-deceived in a much more problematic way. Dawkins, cultural Christianity, nominal cultural Christianity, and then believing Christianity. These are three distinctions that we need to have when we look at what Dawkins believes, and we realize that there is a difference. Now, we could go into, is nominal Christianity something good? Is nominal Christianity a culture that's been impacted by the values and beliefs of Christianity and thus has been changed? Or is it a stepping stone to atheism? That's a different discussion. We're not going to have that one right now. Dawkins is in no way, go listen to it again. Go listen to it knowing where he was 17 years ago. And you will see he's not extolling the virtues of Christianity, the goodness of Christianity, the belief system. He even goes, I don't believe a single word of it. He's not saying this is valuable to society. The beliefs are valuable to society. In fact, he's saying it's not. He wants belief in God to go down. He wants adherence to the Bible to go down. What it says, what God's word says, to go down. He doesn't want those things, but he just wants some of the peripheral things. Now, he is a confused individual. Obviously, in a lot of ways, he's a confused individual, but he's even confused on this point. You can tell at a certain level internally, which I don't think he even understands this, but you can tell there's a desire to hold on to certain things of Christianity while also rapidly trying to tear those things down. Yes, he is putting himself into a impossible position where he does want his cake and to eat it too. This is where you can go to the again, late 1800s. Evolution on the rise, atheism on the rise, Marxism on the rise, all these things, things specifically coming against God to try and remove him from the picture. And you get the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. And he realizes what's going on. And he goes, hey guys, if you kill God, if God is dead, then everything that's attached to him is dead too. You can't push God off the bridge and then rifle through his pockets to pull out the things that you like. If he's dead, everything goes with him. The, quote, soft values of Christianity are gone. We need brave supermen to stand up and impose their hard values on society. Richard Dawkins does not understand this, and he's trying to hold together the tension of a vacuum, where he's kicked out what gave something substance, yet trying to hold on to things. But he is not realizing that the values of Christianity are good to a society and produce a good society. Again, the only value he might place is that they were useful myths that helped his society evolve to the state where it's at. They were historically useful only in the sense that they got people through a pre-scientific time. But now that the new era is upon us, the era of science and reason, those things are problematic and they hold us back. It's important to understand all these things. Why? Because again, look at these people's reaction. They're not based on what Dawkins actually believes. They're not based on how Dawkins is defining his beliefs, his views. They're based on that specific person's desires. They have their belief system, their worldview. They're seeing Dawkins use certain words that agree, that they go, hey, I have those words in my worldview. He used them, therefore he's shifted towards my worldview. And then you read most of the ones I read, they're then injecting a little bit more. They're taking it a little bit further. Why? Are these just ignorant people? Oh my goodness, they're so dumb. They don't get it. No, they're not. They're doing something that's a very normal human reaction that every single one of us does and will continue to do, regardless of if you are aware of it or not. Now, you need to fight against this urge, this desire, this bad reaction that we have as humans. When we hear something, we naturally put it into the categories we already have. So if we have categories for Christianity, for some of the terms that he's using, we put it into those categories immediately. And then from there, we use that as an interpretive lens to understand what he's saying. Well, that's wrong. That's the wrong way to do it, because you don't know how he's defining these things, and you're missing some of the details that clarify it. You're also missing the context, the history, where Dawkins is at, where he's been at for the past at least 17 years. You miss all that. And then these people have made themselves self-deceived. They're drawing wrong conclusions, which is going to lead to wrong actions. They're going to misinterpret where society is at, where it's heading, and they're going to make missteps because of that. Now, that's a little bit hyperbolic in the sense of I'm not predicting that the specific people that I read are, because of this one little thing, are going to have these big dramatic mistakes. In general, that's the type of thing that happens when you interpret things this way. But again, we all do it. This goes beyond benefit of the doubt, charity, misapplied charity. We talked about that before. This is something slightly different. It's just how you interpret. Now, the problem is, if you know that people do this, you can manipulate them massively and easily. Like I said, it's an actual tactic that is taught places, like Mormon missionary training. Mormon missionaries specifically use terms, Christian terms, in a way that is deceptive. They know their beliefs, and they know their beliefs. Well, I mean, there's a lot of indoctrination there. They really don't fully understand their beliefs in the sense of how exactly they're different from Christianity. But that's a whole nother thing. But they are still taught to interact with Christians in a way that doesn't emphasize the differences. Don't emphasize the differences. Focus on the commonalities. So you present it in a way that an unsuspecting Christian go, oh, wow. So you guys I thought you were some weird cult, but you're just another group of Christians just like us. You know, I've been looking for a good church. Maybe I will check out yours. Except just because they're talking about Jesus, gospel, salvation, God the Father, Holy Spirit, all these things, there's an important question to ask, and it's a question that, you know, you should ask when looking at that video Dawkins is, what do you mean by that? How do you define that? Who is God the Father? Who is the Holy Spirit? And I've done this before. I've had this conversation with Mormons of laying out, okay, who is this being that you are calling God the Father? Who is this being that you're calling Jesus? And we I'll lay out my Jesus, they lay out their Jesus. And we've come to the conclusion, and even agree upon, that these are radically different beings. And then I bring it to, okay, so we're agreed that we have you and I have a different God. And they go, no, we have the same God. Because they're just taught to stick to the tactic. Now, this comes into play when it comes to churches nowadays being infiltrated by secular ideas. This goes beyond just, quote, woke ideas, woke manipulation. This goes to so many different false ideas, false teachers coming in. They use this. Don't emphasize the difference. Emphasize the commonality. Just use the terms people are familiar with. That's where they can start talking about justice. Oh my goodness, social justice. The phrase social justice is such a... it was designed to be manipulative. Well, who wouldn't want justice in society? Well, yeah, that's very true, but the phrase actually means something. Well, who doesn't care about Black lives? Who thinks Black lives don't matter? Of course Black lives matter. Well, the phrase means something different than just the words involved. So they use things like this to manipulate you. But again, it goes on in the church, in quote woke circles, to get you to believe things. Well, they start talking about justice, and they start talking about the need for bringing biblical justice and God's justice, and we want to bring that to society. Oh, we want to take it out of the church into the street and see the society transformed and changed. What do you mean by justice? Because your version of justice seems radically different. In fact, it seems more aligned with Marxism. This is the biggest thing. And one problem is when we do this, we develop a loyalty. When we misinterpret in the way we're talking about, when we have that reaction, when you've assumed what they believe rather than actually fully testing it, you develop a loyalty that can be exploited. And this is how I've seen so many otherwise solid, good, faithful Christians get suckered into defending. Now, they don't believe woke nonsense themselves, but get suckered into defending openly woke people because they misinterpreted them and developed this loyalty. And so when you challenge, it comes down to, over time, that when you challenge X teacher's belief, your friend looks at you and goes, well, when you challenge them, you're challenging me because they said X, Y, and Z, and I agreed with that because it is biblical, not realizing it's a misinterpretation. So if you challenge that person, you're challenging me. It makes it personal. You're now invested. Because you have to then dig through and go, whoa. Okay, you think they mean this when they say justice. Yeah, they explained it so well. It was clear. It was biblical. No. Here's the words they used, things they said. Here's the expanded context of it. Here's all this information. You have to get them to accept that mountain of information just for them to understand that this one thing they got was a misinterpretation on their end. People don't like that. They don't like to be told that you misinterpreted something. They don't like to be told that you got this wrong. They want it to be, no, I want that person to be right because I'm somehow wrong if they're wrong. It breeds loyalty. That's one of the big dangers of having this sort of knee-jerk, misinterpretive reaction. Now, I can bring examples even with woke people from my own life. Years and years and years ago, Sam Allberry. If you're not familiar with Sam Allberry, huge pusher of side B, same-sex attracted Christianity. The idea that you can have this innocent state of same-sex attraction, that you can't act upon it, but that simply the desire, the attraction, those are synonyms, is acceptable to have. You just can't act upon it in your mind or externally. Well, one of the problems is if you're having a desire, that's already an internal reaction. That's a whole nother thing. You can go 2 episodes ago, interview with Dr. Tom Rush. We talked about this in particular. Also going to be putting out an article on the website just so you have a couple forms to digest that content in. But he was giving a talk and I watched it and I got something out of it that actually was pretty helpful. It helped me to clarify and to start a process of increased clarification on my view of marriage and human sexuality. In fact, this whole incident was a key in really helping me refine and define those things. But it came through misinterpretation of what he said. Now, what I got out of it, what he was saying was that as humans, as fallen humans, all of our sexualities are broken. That none of us, by nature, as fallen men, pursue God's design for sexuality and marriage. And that's true. We're all broken that way. Every single one of us, every human, we're not going to naturally follow God's design because God's design is contrary to our sin nature. Our sin nature is selfish. God's design is selfless. Those two things don't line up. There has to be a change, a radical change in all of us in order to enable us to have a truly God-honoring marriage within God's design. Now, again, people can stumble through their lives. Two atheists can get married, be married their entire life. That's not the point here. The point is that we don't naturally pursue these things. And even within a marriage, we're going to constantly substitute selfishness in place of selflessness. I got that out of what he said. It helped me refine a few things and continue on. In fact, it's been a foundation for why I can say that same-sex attraction is a problem. Just like an inclination to having multiple heterosexual partners is a problem. Just like an inclination to a desire for pornography is a problem. All these things are problems equally. The problem is that's not what Sam Alberry was arguing. He was arguing almost more for an amnesty of, oh, well, we just need to be gentle because we're all broken this way. See, what he was arguing is God doesn't fix that for same-sex attracted people. The problem is God can. He offers it. The problem is you don't want that. You don't want to surrender this part of you and have to pursue God's design. You would rather burn with passion. A little bit of a rabbit trail. The point is, I misinterpreted. I had this bad reaction, and it turned into something positive. Because I got something positive that then started a different journey for me. Journey that actually led me to realizing Sam Alberry was a problem. But the problem is, I've seen people, they'll have this reaction. They'll get something good. They'll go, I got something good from that person. Therefore, what they said was good. Therefore, this evidence that's now being presented that I can see that contradicts that shows that they are teaching false things, that they are a problematic teacher to be avoided. They go, because of this loyalty that's built in, because of getting something good, even though it's through a misinterpretation, they then create a loyalty and they go, well, I'm not going to reject this person. I'm not going to reject them despite the clear evidence because this evidence must be somehow not as bad as it seems because I got this good thing from them. These reactions are dangerous. So let's pull it together. No, Dawkins isn't becoming a Christian. Dawkins hasn't even moved an inch. He's right where he's always been. He doesn't see Christianity as a valuable thing to society. He does correctly identify that Islam is a dangerous thing to society, but he's also mixing that with it being dangerous partly because it challenges British society, which is not historically Islam. It doesn't have an Islamic tradition, Islamic heritage. He's mixing that also partly with the beliefs, and that's where it gets a little bit muddy. But we need to control our reactions to things. We need to ask questions. We need to look at something and go, this seems like it would be quite the shift for that person. And if it's quite the shift, maybe I should ask some questions about what do you mean? Where were you previously? How are you defining these things? When you do that, you might just find out that your initial reaction was wrong. Tiny bit of research, tiny bit of patience can save you a lot of headaches. It can save you, can save others from being manipulated by woke people, by nonsense, by all sorts of false teachings. This is about creating a defense in yourself against these things, about creating a patience, creating a willingness to ask questions, and just taking that moment, taking that breath to go, is this true or not? I hope this has been helpful, and if it has, make sure you engage with us somehow. Like, share, subscribe, comment. We want to hear from you, positive, negative. Might not agree with the negative, but we'll still hear it. I'll hear you out. Get negative comments all the time. In fact, seem to get them more often than the positive ones, but my goodness, do I appreciate the positive responses when we get them. And we do get good ones. We get nice, insightful comments, and I really appreciate all of you that take the time to do that, because it helps us understand that we're doing something of value, and it is helping you. If this has been helpful to you, again, consider sharing with other people who it might value as well. And until next time, don't go woke.